Which Georgia Bulldog defenders are going to ball out during the 2025 season? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video, because there's a lot of guys who I think really need to step up and have a big season if Georgia wants to put together another elite defense. I think they're going to be losing at least 7 guys on defense alone to the NFL. So there's a lot of opportunities out there for some of these younger players and even some of these guys who have played a decent bit already to take that next step in their development. So we're going to talk about a lot of guys in this video that I think you're going to know all about this fall. And we're going to start on the defensive line, and I'm going to start this video talking about a guy who I think could be one of the more important defenders across the entire defense next year, a really important player, and that's Jordan Hall. This is year 3 for him coming up. He was a 5-star at a high school and a guy who I thought and still may be an elite player on the defensive line. And as we've seen, whether it was 21, 22, or even the Super Bowl over the weekend, you have to have an elite defensive line and you have to have elite defenders, multiple guys, right? Game changers, guys who can just wreck teams and bully offensive linemen, right? Make plays in the backfield and make those drive-killing type of plays. You have to have them, and I think Jordan Hall still has that potential. He only played in 6 games last year due to injury, only 4 tackles. That can't happen, right? They have to have a lot of production out of him, I think. Christian Miller is solid. They've got some younger defensive linemen who I think have the potential to emerge, but they need Jordan Hall sooner than later to be the guy they think they signed out of high school, right? He is big, he is physical, and he dominated where he played in Jacksonville. There's a reason he was a 5-star prospect, and he's a guy that I think they really need to come into his own, and I think he can if he stays healthy and continues to develop over the next 6-7 months. This is a guy who I think could have a breakout 2025 season. They need him to, no doubt about it, especially because you got to have multiple guys. You have to have depth, and they need some game changers, and I think if he's healthy and continues the path that he's on, he has the potential to be that type of player. Joseph Jonah-Ajonye is another guy who I think is going to play a lot next year. Again, no Michael Williams, no Warren Brinson, no Nazir Stackhouse, Ty Ingram Dawkins, he's gone too. So there's a lot of opportunities for these defensive linemen to step up and make a name for themselves. And this is a young man who has been barely playing football. He only played, started playing at the high school level as a sophomore. He's still new to the game. He played in 4 games last year, made 1 tackle, got his feet wet, but it wasn't always pretty when he was out there. And, most of the season he was injured, but he brings plenty of size and raw potential, natural athleticism, 6'4", 275, can play on the edge or can move inside. But for a guy who is, extremely raw and had barely played football, he saw the field early last year on a defensive line that was loaded with experienced veteran players. He still found a way to see the field early on in the season. So another guy, if he's healthy and he continues to develop and work on the fundamentals, the technique, and kind of be an overall player, a run stopper, pass rusher, the way the Georgia staff thinks he can be, he's another guy who I think is going to open up a lot of eyes on the defensive line. Other guys to know, Jordan Thomas, he's going to be in year 2. We'll see if he can take a big step forward. Nazir Johnson, Nnamdi Ogboko, those are the 3 big kind of 300-pound plus guys in the middle. One of those guys are going to have to step up as well. We'll see how it goes, but a lot of pressure, I think, on Trey Scott and these young players to, hurry up and get ready to play at a high level. So just a few defensive linemen to know. On the edge, right? No Jalen Walker, who, was middle linebacker, outside linebacker, just a versatile weapon. Best linebacker in college football. He's gone. Damon Wilson entered the portal. Sam Mpemba entered the portal. So, again, another position where guys really need to step up. Quintavious Johnson is a guy I've been high on for a long, long time. He was a freshman last year. He played out of Mays. Kind of a 3-star prospect. I think flew under the radar. I think most Georgia fans still have no idea who this guy is. 6'4", 255, really good athlete. I saw him play in person with Dean at Mays High School in 100-degree heat in August. He was playing both ways, running back, defensive line, clearly the best player on the field. He played in 12 out of 14 games last year and made 4 tackles. And when you watch him warm up pregame with the rest of those guys, he fits right in. I mean, he is a physical dude. He's built well. I mean, this is a guy who you look at him and say, okay, that guy's a player here. Can he turn into a football player? Because he looks great, right? I think he has the potential to do that, dude. He's got size, he's got athleticism, and he's got a big opportunity in front of him to turn into a possibly dependable pass rusher on the edge for the Dogs. So just a year 2 player who I think could open up some eyes as a sophomore. And then Gabe Harris, one of the more dependable pass rushers returning on the team, 6'4", 260, another really good athlete. I saw him in high school. The dude can do like a backflip as easy as I've ever seen a guy who was 250 at the time. Moves well, and again, the athleticism really stands out. He played in all 14 games last year, 14 tackles, 3.5 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. I think he's going to be that go-to outside linebacker, pass rusher, edge defender that we see a lot of this season. So he's already, flashed big play ability and, the ability to make plays in the backfield. So massive, massive year 3 for Gabe Harris, who, could possibly be Georgia's best pass rusher for the 2025 season. So those are 2 edge guys that have a lot of pressure on them to have a big season. So 2 guys to keep in mind there. At linebacker, got to be Chris Cole, right? The SEC all-freshman nominee last year, 6'3", 225. And listen, Justin Williams is really good too. He was the number 1 linebacker out of high school from Texas. I think we're going to see a decent amount of him this year too, behind C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson. But it's going to be really tough to keep Chris Cole on the bench very long. He played in all 14 games last year as a freshman on a loaded, talented defense with plenty of guys ahead of him, and he still found a way to see the field in 14 games. He made 16 tackles, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 forced fumble recoveries, No, I'm not saying he's Jalen Walker, right? He's more lean. He doesn't look, like Hercules or, the Incredible Hulk like Jalen Walker does. So he's got a different type of frame to him, but he is long. He's outstanding in coverage and showed that ability last year. But he can attack and he can hit and he's got instincts and he's a natural playmaker and a guy that I think is going to see the field a ton in the fall. He may not start because, again, Raylan Wilson, C.J. Allen, those are 2 of the best linebackers in the SEC and possibly the country. But Chris Cole is definitely going to see the field, as is Justin Williams. But after Chris Cole, what he did last year, I expect him to have a breakout season, a guy that everyone is going to learn about across college football. In the secondary, got to be Janelle Aguero, year 3, right? Go time. Same with Jordan Hall on the defensive line. This should be the year where we see a big step forward from Janelle Aguero. Malachi Starks off to the NFL. Dan Jackson off to the NFL. They do have KJ Bolden returning at safety, but Janelle Aguero, it's time. It is time for him to be that guy that they signed out of high school. He was one of the top safety prospects in the country, brings an intimidating presence. He's a hard hitter, an outstanding run defender who can play well in zone coverage too. So he's still got to take steps forward in coverage, I believe. But we'll see. He did play in 11 games last year, made 5 starts, 26 tackles, right? So the guy has played. He's got experience. And I think this is the year, in year 3, where he turns up and says, hey, I'm the next great safety. KJ Bolden, very good too. I think he could be an All-American and, top 10 pick one day. But Janelle Aguero, this should be his year where he opens up a lot of eyes and starts to make, consistent plays in the secondary. There's no reason why he can't. They did sign several defensive backs in this past 2025 class, but none of them should be able to pass this guy on the depth chart. I think he's got a massive opportunity. Again, in year 3, this should be the year where you got to be ready and you need to start making some big plays on a consistent basis. And I think Janelle Aguero is good enough and he's talented enough to get the job done. So definitely a guy in the secondary with a big opportunity to start and make a lot of plays next season. So we'll see how his development goes, but he can hit, he can tackle. There's no doubt about it. And if he can make strides in coverage, I think he is going to make a lot of plays opposite KJ Bolden. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on. And then, of course, everyone wants to talk about Ellis Robinson. We're going to see Ellis Robinson this year. There's no doubt about it. I think Daniel Harris might be one bad pass interference call away from getting benched, and then we see Ellis Robinson. You have to play him because if you don't play him, he's leaving. But if he's not playing, then he's not good enough. He's not ready to play. So then if he transfers, it's not a big deal because the dude couldn't see the field. But that's a topic for down the road. I think we're going to see a lot of him a lot. We're going to see him. I don't know if he's going to start. He might, but he's a guy they need to make an impact. But don't forget about DeMello Jones. He is an outstanding athlete. He was a do-it-all player down at Swainsboro, small town school, running back, wide receiver, defensive back, quarterback. This guy could play all over the place. And when I spoke with Travaris Robinson down in New Orleans, he said, a lot of these guys don't get tested in high school because they're such great athletes, and opposing quarterbacks aren't throwing their way when they know that this defensive back's going to play at the University of Georgia, right? You stay away from that guy. So a lot of these, young defensive backs have to learn to play the position, right? You have to be more than an athlete. You have to be technically sound. You have to have fluid hips. You have to be able to run. You have to know what you're doing in coverage. So it's tough to play defensive back, especially cornerback, especially when you're young. So I'm not surprised that we didn't see a ton of those two last year, but year two, I do expect to see a lot of Ellis Robinson in some capacity, whether he earns a starting job or he's that, the next cornerback off the bench to see the field. But DeMello Jones is a cornerback that I think has the potential to start. Maybe not this year, but next year. Really good player, dynamic athlete, and he is getting better and better at the cornerback spot. So definitely those are two cornerbacks that I think are on the rise and are only going to get better. So defensive linemen, linebackers, edge defenders, safeties, cornerbacks. There's a lot of players on this roster who have a big opportunity to have a monster 2025 season. Georgia needs it. They need these guys to step up. We'll see if they can get the job done. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. I'll see you over on the website.